the probability of a recession happening in the next 12 months is the highest in more than 40 years, Michael Snyder reports. If they're actually telling us that a recession is coming this time around, how bad is it going to be? In 2008, officials kept assuring us over and over again that there would not be a recession, and then we plunged into the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression of the 1930s. But here in 2023, what's coming is so obvious that nobody can deny what's happening. The economy is already starting to come apart at the seams all around us, and the experts, quote-unquote, at the Federal Reserve openly acknowledge that they're making things even worse by hiking interest rates. Pretty much everyone agrees that rougher times are ahead of us, and a probability model for the New York Federal Reserve is now projecting that there is a 68.2% chance that there will be a recession within the next 12 months. The odds that the United States will fall into a recession at some point over the next 12 months have risen to a 40-year high according to the probability model from the New York Federal Reserve. The probability that the country will enter a recession within the next year has risen to 68.2% according to the New York Fed, which is the highest level since 1982. The Fed's recession risk indicator is now greater than it was in November 2007, not long before the subprime crisis, when it stood at 40%. This is the highest that figure has been in more than 40 years. Just think about that for a moment. The recession of early 1980s was a real whopper, and if you were alive at that time, you probably still have very painful memories of it. Are we about to experience something similar? Larry Summers says that he also believes that we probably have about a 70% chance of a recession within the next 12 months. Former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers has also expressed his view that the odds of a downturn are probably about 70%. The chance that a recession will not begin this year in the U.S. over the next 12 months is probably about 70%, Summers said in a recent interview with Foreign Policy. And as I put together the lags associated with monetary policy, the credit crunch risks, the need for continuing action around inflation, the risk of geopolitical and other shocks affecting commodities, 70% would be the range that I would be in. So many pundits are very negative about the next 12 months, that we certainly don't have to wait for bad economic news because it's happening all around us right now. In fact, New York Fed Empire State Business Condition Index just fell more than 42 points in a single month. After an unexpected surge into growing territory in April, the New York Fed Empire State Business Conditions Index plunged 42.6 points in May to minus 31.8. Economists had forecast a milder slump to -2. Readings below zero indicate worsening conditions. The May decline is the sharpest on record apart from the initial lockdown months of the pandemic. Read that sentence again. The May decline is the sharpest on record apart from the initial lockdown months of the pandemic. Not even when nearly the entire country was locked down did we see a drop of this magnitude. And this comes at a time when consumers, small businesses, and large businesses are all struggling. On Monday, we learned that total consumer debt in the U.S. has just reached a brand new all-time record high. Total consumer debt hit a fresh new high in the first quarter of 2023, pushing past $17 trillion, even amid a sharp pullback in home borrowing. The total for borrowing costs, all categories, hit $17.05 trillion, an increase of nearly $150 billion, or 0.9% during the January to March period, the New York Federal Reserve reported Monday. That took total indebtedness up to about $2.9 trillion from the pre-COVID period ended in 2019. Of course, interest rates are moving higher at the same time, and if you could believe it, the average rate of interest on credit card balances is now over 20%. The rise in credit card usage and debt is particularly concerning because interest rates are astronomically high right now. The average credit card annual percentage rate, or APR, hit a new record of 20.33% last week, according to a bank rate database that goes back to 1985. Carrying debt card balances in this environment is financially suicide, but many Americans find themselves forced to charge food and other basic supplies these days because they don't have enough and they don't have any other options. They're strapped for cash, in other words. Millions upon millions of people are barely scraping by from month to month, and delinquency rates just continue to move higher. Delinquency rates for all debt increased, up 0.6 percentage point for credit cards to 6.5%, and 0.2 percentage points for auto loans to 6.9%. Total delinquency rates move up 0.2 percentage points to 3%, the highest since the third quarter of 2020. Meanwhile, here in the early stages of 2023, small businesses are filing for bankruptcy at a record pace. Small businesses throughout the U.S. are currently filing for bankruptcy at a record pace, exceeding the levels observed in 2020 at the height of the coronavirus pandemic. According to a UBS Evidence Lab note reviewed by the Epoch Times, the 4-week moving average for private filings was 73% higher than it was in June 2020. They also warned the situation may worsen as the repercussions of the recent banking crisis start to manifest. We believe one of the more underappreciated signs of distress in U.S. corporate credit is already emanating from the small and mid-sized enterprises sector. Matthew Mish, head of credit strategy at UBS, wrote in the recently published research memo. The smallest of firms are facing the most severe pressure from rising rates, persistent inflation, and slowing growth. Things were not even this bad during the extended lockdowns during the early stages of the COVID pandemic. And many more small businesses will inevitably fail in the next weeks and months to come. Large businesses are faring relatively better, but right now we are witnessing the most prolonged corporate profits downturn in 7 years. As the U.S. economy teeters on the brink of recession, Wall Street is already enduring what could turn out to be the most prolonged corporate profits downturn in 7 years. With the first quarter earnings season drawing to a close, the profits of S&P 500 companies are estimated to have dropped 3.7% on average compared to a year ago. And as I've detailed extensively in previous articles, large companies all over the U.S. have already started conducting mass layoffs. Needless to say, they are not letting people go because they think the economy is about to turn around. They can see what's coming and they're trying to get ready in advance. And before I end this article, let me give you one more very troubling sign. In April, the federal government brought in 26.1% less tax revenue than it did in April 2022. Okay, that's over a quarter less. The Treasury took in $638.52 billion in April. That was more than double the receipts in March. This is to be expected as the government collects a large amount of tax revenue in April, but compared to April 2022, tax receipts were down 26.1%. This is one number that the federal government cannot doctor, and it's absolutely horrible. We really are heading into economic nightmare, and of course the economy is just one element of the perfect storm that we're now facing. So what shall we do? I would encourage you to do whatever you need to do in order to get prepared for very rough times. Our system is in the process of melting down, and the government is not going to come riding into your rescue when everything is finally hitting the fan. And this is by Michael Snyder. He says about the author, my name is Michael, and my brand new book entitled End Times is now available on Amazon. In addition to my new book, I've written 6 other books that are available on Amazon, including 7-Year Apocalypse, Lost Prophecies of the Future of America, The Beginning of the End, and Living a Life That Really Matters, commissions earned. When you purchase any of these books, you help to support the work that I'm doing, and one way that you can really help is by sending copies as gifts to family and friends. Time is short, and I need help getting these warnings into the hands of as many people as possible. I have also started a brand new Substack newsletter, and I encourage you to subscribe so you won't miss any of my articles. I've published thousands of articles on the Economic Collapse blog, End of the American Dream and the Most Important News, and the articles that I publish on those sites are republished on dozens of other prominent websites all over the globe. I always freely and happily allow others to republish my articles on their own websites, but I also ask that they include this about the author section with each article. The materials contained in this article is for general information purposes only, and readers should consult licensed professionals before making any legal, business, financial, or health decisions. I encourage you to follow me on social media, Facebook and Twitter, and any way that you can share these articles with others is definitely a great help. These are such troubled times and people need hope. John 3:16 tells us about the hope that God has given us through Jesus Christ. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. If you have not already done so, I strongly urge you to invite Jesus Christ to be your Lord and Savior today. And this is by Michael Snyder on the Economic Collapse blog. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Finally, support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.